Welcome back to The Person Everyone Needs. Today we're going to finish up our interview with Dr. Mark Rutland. What a joy it was to get to talk to him about his favorite character, David, and my favorite character, Jonathan, the effect that he had on his life. And I've just been so honored to see it. And so I look forward to hearing this last little bit, and then we're going to close these sessions with some thoughts. All right, I got one more question for you. I appreciate you being so patient, taking this time. I can't tell you how grateful I am. I want for you, if you would, to describe the person that everyone needs.
Well, this goes back to our discussion of Jonathan. Everybody needs a Jonathan, somebody like that, a friend that sticketh closer than a brother, someone who believes in you, someone who will be generous with you, kind to you, affirm you, see the best in you. Everybody needs somebody like that. Now, of course, what you want is, like the kid said, I'm happy for God to love me. I'd like somebody with skin on their face. You know?
Right.
So you want friends, not people, wife, a husband, a parent, something. Having said all that, Webb, at some point or another, the best of us, even Jonathan, he didn't live long enough to do it, but at some point, the very best of us fail each other. So the person that everybody needs is that friend who sticketh closer to the brother, that believes in us, that is generous to us, that is gracious to us, and of course, that is Jesus. Yeah. And if you really have Jesus as that person in your life, nothing really can shake you.
Wow, that's really good. I really appreciate it. I just want to take this moment and say that your wife has been a Jonathan for me. When I had no worth when I got to Southeastern. I was depressed, suicidal, and scared, and I didn't know which way was which. I didn't have a church. I didn't have a hope. In a season when I finally repented and asked God to open my eyes to what He had for me, your wife chose me out of all the freshmen to be a part of the leadership crew of first teams, and that just willingness to use me in that moment. And then the next year she made me a mentor, and the next year, I served with her again, and she just was she's one of those people for me that when I needed someone desperately, she saw something in me, and I'm so very grateful and for her relationship and for her kindness to me. And I mean, you're great too.
Throw me a bone.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've learned so much from you.
Oh, yeah, and you're kind of good in my life, too. Yeah.
It's so funny. When I came back from Southeastern, my pastor, we were talking one day, I think it was on Pastor Appreciation, and I said, Pastor Buddy, you're my favorite pastor. And he said, what about preacher? And I said, oh, that's Dr. Rutland, but you're my favorite pastor. And it offended him.
Oh.
He still today would talk about am I still your second favorite preacher?
Well, before we came on this podcast, I called my wife and told her, said, I'm doing a podcast interview with Webb Hoggard. And she said, oh, what a wonderful young man. Tell him I still believe in him.
I still believe in you. Man, those words can change somebody's life. I remember when I got to Southeastern University, I was not in a good space. I'm going to tell you my testimony today and also tell you that I believe in you. I don't know who you are and what you're dealing with. I don't know what you're afraid of. I don't know what's holding you back. I don't know what the next step is for you, and I don't know what's the thing that's intimidating you, but I just want you to know that I believe in you. When I got to Southeastern University, I was in a relationship that I was not being the leader. I was not being a good person. I was failing in every way that I could, and it was harming my relationship with God. It wasn't her fault. It was my fault. But as I got into Southeastern, I realized that I was depressed. I couldn't find good friends. I couldn't find a church. I couldn't find a group of people I wanted to be around. And so my heart was struggling. And I remember during this time I went to the piano room and began to play piano every day. And I taught myself how to play piano in a short amount of time because that was the only friend I could find. And I went to a revival service and went to the altar and just asked God. I said, look, if you don't touch me, I don't know what I'll do. And I felt like God's arms wrapped me up in that moment. And I just felt like a hug from heaven. I've never felt it again since, but I felt like it in that moment. And I left that day. I went back to school. I started finding new friends. We found a church with a pastor who loved me and took care of me and acted like I was his own son. Pastor Philip Holzabus that lives in Lakeland, Florida. He is still, to me, one of the greatest men I've ever met. And long after that, I went to First Teams, which is where Mrs. Rutland had me come as a leader for the following year, and I started leading other freshmen to know who Christ was, and I really found my worth in that. It was during this season that God began to bring men and women in my life that could speak life into who I was, even though at that time I felt like I was so dead inside, and God began to build me back up. But what I was most amazed by was how many times there would be somebody, in the moment that I was the lowest, they would come by and just say, Webb, I believe in you. Or, Webb, I can see there's potential there. Don't give up. There's something worth looking into. There's something worth finding. They begin to build up my identity. They begin to make me believe in a destiny. I spent most of my childhood just believing that great things were going to come in the future. And when I was in the greatest moment of my potential, I had stalled because of being over anxious and worried and scared. And there were other people that took the time to help me find my place. And so I'm so very grateful for those that are in my life, those Jonathans, those friends that were around me the whole time I was there. They began to speak life into me, and I began to believe and dream again. And eventually, I would work out of my depression. I would take that gift that I learned while I was there playing music. I would become a worship leader in a church, and little by little, I became liked and loved and a person of influence and someone who began to invest in the very campus that had saved me. And so God turned it completely around. And I guess I wanted to say all that to you. I'm happily married now. I got 3 boys. I'm living my dream as a pastor. I'm getting to pastor my own home church. I mean, over and over again, I could just tell you, like, I am abundantly blessed. And when someone says things like that, someone's like, well, yeah, it must be easy to live when you're abundantly blessed. I just want to tell you 2 things today. Number one, that's a perspective, being blessed. It's a perspective that you can have wherever you're at right now. If you're frustrated, if you're depressed, if you're lowly in the way you think about your life, you need to create a winner's attitude and begin to start believing that you're blessed. Start seeing the good things in your life. And it's not a good thing to sit around and compare yourself to other people. It's easy. You can find some area of your life that you're better than somebody else, but really you need to look genuinely at the blessings of your life and begin to thank God for them. The second thing is look for somebody who believes in you. No matter how cheesy they are, no matter if you can believe them or not, if you trust them, you need somebody who believes in you, and you need to lean into what they say. And so if you've got a praying grandma, go ask her, who do you see when you look at me? If you've got a pastor that you can trust, that you believe in, if you've got a life coach of some sort, if you've got a friend that is wise, I'm not talking about someone who is living for themselves. I'm talking about someone who could actually speak into your life. That's what changed my life, was when I invited mentors in, people like Mrs. Rutland, and I listened to people like Dr. Rutland. It really changed my life because I wanted to become better, and because they had a heart to serve those who wanted to get better, I did. Right now I'm talking to a young man who is concerned about, he's using a lot of the same words I used when I was in college. He told me that everything in his life has been hard and that he has to work hard for everything he gets, and so nothing is ever easy. And I definitely have been there. I've been in that spot where I thought I'd never get anything good. But God brought it around. And today I look and I can see how God knit together all these parts of my life. And so my job now is not to tell him, get over it and it's going to be fine. My job is to look at this boy in his face and tell him, you're going to make it. You're going to make it. It's going to be okay. I believe in you. Just don't give up. Just don't give up on God. Don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on your future. And you know what? I believe in him. I believe he might just be the person that everyone needs. We'll see you next week.